Madison Square Garden fell silent on that crisp September evening in 1991. 20,000 people held their collective breath, suspended in that magical moment before music fills an empty space. The air itself seemed charged with anticipation, thick with the knowledge that tonight was different. Tonight was special. The benefit concert had already featured performances from music's greatest legends: Madonna, Prince, Whitney Houston, each delivering performances that under normal circumstances would have been the highlight of any evening. But tonight, the audience waited for something unprecedented. Michael Jackson and Elton John sharing a stage for the first time since their brief, almost accidental collaboration at the American Music Awards 3 years prior. The lights had been dimmed for nearly 5 minutes, plunging the arena into a darkness that felt alive, pulsing with the heartbeats of 20,000 eager fans. Some clutched programs listing the night's performers, the ink still fresh on the hastily added notation. Special collaboration: E. John and M. Jackson. Others whispered theories about what this unexpected pairing might produce. The most devoted fans of both artists stood absolutely motionless, as if the slightest movement might somehow disrupt the alchemy that was about to unfold before their eyes. A single spotlight pierced the darkness, illuminating a grand piano positioned center stage. No introduction was necessary. The moment Elton John appeared, resplendent in a cobalt blue suit adorned with thousands of hand-sewn sequins that caught and scattered the light like stars, the crowd erupted. The applause was deafening, a physical force that seemed to shake the very foundations of the iconic venue. Elton acknowledged the reception with a characteristic bow, his smile genuine but touched with something else: nervousness, perhaps, or anticipation. He settled himself at the piano, adjusted his signature glasses, and began to play. The opening notes of Your Song floated through the arena, instantly recognizable, instantly beloved. The audience sighed collectively, a sound of pure pleasure at hearing this classic performed by its creator. Elton's voice, rich and warm, wrapped around the lyrics with the familiarity of a lover reciting a well-worn poem. The performance was flawless, but those paying close attention, the true fans, the music journalists, the industry insiders scattered throughout the audience, could sense something different in Elton's demeanor. There was a restrained quality to his performance, an unusual hesitation, as if he were saving his energy for something yet to come. As the final notes of Your Song faded, Elton remained at the piano. The expected exit, the bow and retreat that would signal the end of his set, didn't come. Instead, he turned to the audience, his expression suddenly mischievous. "I wasn't planning to say anything," he began, his British accent cutting through the respectful silence that had fallen over Madison Square Garden. "But I've just been told that there's someone else backstage. Someone who apparently thinks he can outdance me." A ripple of surprise and delight moved through the crowd. They understood instantly. "Now, I know he sold a few records," Elton continued, his tone playful, "and I know he's got those fancy moves. But what Mr. Michael Jackson doesn't know is that some of us British lads can hold our own too." The audience roared with laughter and anticipation. This unscripted moment, this apparent challenge, was exactly the kind of spontaneous magic that made live performances unforgettable. "So what do you say, New York?" Elton called out, his hands poised dramatically over the piano keys. "Should we bring him out here and settle this once and for all?" The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. 20,000 voices unified in a resounding yes that seemed to lift the roof several inches higher. Elton grinned and launched into an unexpected, upbeat rendition of Rocket Man, his fingers dancing across the keys with newfound energy. The band, momentarily caught off guard by this deviation from the set list, quickly recovered and joined in. As the song built toward its first chorus, a second spotlight suddenly illuminated the far edge of the stage. And there he was, Michael Jackson, the king of pop himself, dressed in a crisp white shirt with elaborate gold embroidery across the chest, black pants with a signature gold stripe down the sides, and of course the single white glove that had become as iconic as the man himself. The audience reaction transcended mere applause or cheers. It was a primal, almost religious response: screams, tears, gasps of disbelief, merging into a wall of sound that physically pushed against the performers on stage. Michael acknowledged the audience with a small, almost shy wave, then turned his attention to Elton, who continued playing without missing a beat, though his wide grin betrayed his excitement at the unfolding drama. For a moment, Michael simply stood there, absorbing the music, his body subtly responding to the rhythm in that unconscious way that revealed how deeply music lived within him. Then, as if responding to some invisible cue, he began to move. What happened next became the stuff of legend, a moment referenced in music documentaries, captured in countless grainy pre-smartphone videos, and recounted by everyone present as the night they witnessed history. Michael Jackson, rather than launching into his own choreography, began to imitate Elton John. Not just any Elton, but the wild, flamboyant, piano-climbing Elton of the 1970s. Michael strutted across the stage with exaggerated movements, pretended to kick at an invisible piano bench, and mimicked Elton's characteristic head toss with such perfect timing and good-natured humor that Elton himself doubled over with laughter, nearly missing his entrance to the second chorus. The audience, witnessing this playful exchange between two of music's greatest icons, responded with delighted laughter and applause. This was Michael Jackson as few had ever seen him, spontaneous, funny, relaxed in a way that contrasted sharply with his carefully controlled public image. As Rocket Man approached its instrumental bridge, Elton abruptly stopped playing and stood up from the piano. "Oh, you think that's funny, do you?" he called out to Michael, his voice filled with mock indignation, but his face alight with pleasure. Well, two can play at that game. The band, now fully committed to this unplanned spectacle, smoothly transitioned into the opening beats of Billie Jean. Elton kicked away the piano bench with theatrical flair and attempted the moonwalk, a clumsy, endearing parody that sent ripples of laughter through the audience. Michael covered his mouth in delighted surprise, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. But the truly extraordinary moment came next. Instead of continuing the joke, Elton suddenly became serious. He walked to center stage, directly addressing the audience. "You know, we joke around, but I need to say something." The arena quieted immediately. "This man," Elton continued, gesturing toward Michael, "has redefined what it means to be a performer. And tonight, I'm challenging him. Not to a dance-off because God knows I'd lose, but to something else entirely." Michael looked genuinely puzzled now, the script clearly moving beyond what had been rehearsed or discussed backstage. "Michael," Elton said, turning to face him directly, "I'm challenging you to join me in something we've never done before. No rehearsal, no preparation. Just two artists creating something new for these good people who've paid to see something special." A curious hush fell over Madison Square Garden. The band members exchanged uncertain glances. This was uncharted territory, potentially risky for performers of this caliber who were known for perfectionism. Michael stepped forward, his expression guarded but intrigued. He took the microphone Elton offered him. "What exactly did you have in mind?" he asked, his voice soft but clear. Elton's smile widened. "I was thinking we might create a song, right here, right now. I'll play, you sing. Whatever comes to mind. A gift for New York, something that will only ever exist in this moment, in this place." For a brief, tense second, it seemed Michael might refuse. His perfectionism was legendary, his discomfort with improvisation well documented. 20,000 people waited, collectively holding their breath. Then Michael smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that transformed his entire face. "I accept your challenge," he said simply. The crowd erupted. Elton returned to the piano, flexing his fingers dramatically. "Any requests?" he called out to the audience. The response was a cacophony of shouted song titles from both artist catalogs. Laughing, Elton raised his hands for silence. No, not our songs. Something new. A blank canvas." He turned to Michael. "Give me a word, a theme, anything to start with." Michael thought for a moment, then leaned into the microphone. "Unity," he said. Let's create something about bringing people together." Elton nodded appreciatively and began to play. A simple, haunting melody in G minor that seemed to emerge fully formed from his fingertips. After establishing the theme, he looked to Michael, inviting him to join. What followed defied description, though thousands would attempt to capture it in words afterward. Michael Jackson, known for his meticulous preparation and precise performances, closed his eyes and began to improvise lyrics over Elton's evolving melody. His voice, tentative at first, gained confidence with each measure, finding its way through a melody that was being created in real time. In a world divided by fear, he began, his voice clear and strong. "We stand on common ground. Different voices, single heart, a universal sound." Elton responded by enriching the chord progression, adding complexity that somehow perfectly complemented Michael's emerging lyrics. The band, composed of world-class musicians capable of extraordinary musical intuition, began to join in, adding subtle layers of rhythm and harmony. The audience remained absolutely silent, witnessing a moment of pure creation that would never be repeated. By the second verse, Michael had fully surrendered to the process. His body moved naturally with the music, not in his choreographed stage movements, but in the authentic, unconscious way that musicians respond to rhythm and emotion. "When I reach for your hand," he sang, "and you reach back for mine, the walls between us crumble, transcending space and time." Elton, clearly moved by the direction the improvisation had taken, added his own voice and harmony during what had organically become the chorus. Their voices blended with surprising compatibility. Elton's earthy warmth and Michael's clear, pure tenor creating something greater than either alone. For 7 minutes, though many present would later swear it was both an eternity and far too brief, the improvisation continued, building to an emotional crescendo before gradually, intuitively finding its way to a resolution that felt both surprising and inevitable. As the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. The kind of silence that exists only in the wake of something profound. Then, as if released from a spell, Madison Square Garden erupted into what witnesses would later describe as the most thunderous, sustained applause they had ever experienced. People were standing on their seats, embracing strangers, some weeping openly. The music had tapped into something primal and universal, achieving what both artists had always strived for in their work: the transcendence of boundaries, the direct communication of soul to soul. If this story moves you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more untold stories of musical history's most extraordinary moments, when legends met and magic was made before our eyes. Michael and Elton embraced center stage, both visibly moved by what had just occurred. This hadn't been planned as the climax of the evening, but both artists and everyone present knew that nothing could possibly follow this moment. After taking their bows together, they started to leave the stage, but Michael suddenly stopped. He removed the single white glove from his hand, that iconic symbol that had become inseparable from his public image, and handed it to Elton. The gesture was captured by dozens of cameras, though no one could hear what Michael said as he placed a glove in Elton's hand. Elton's expression, however, told the story: surprise, followed by profound emotion. He nodded solemnly, understanding the significance of the gift. Later, those closest to Michael would reveal that he had never before given one of his performance gloves to another artist. It was a recognition of equality, of mutual respect, of a boundary crossed between two artists who had previously admired each other from a distance, but who had now created something together that neither could have created alone. The aftermath of that night extended far beyond the confines of Madison Square Garden. Music critics who had long placed Michael and Elton in separate categories, who had analyzed and dissected their different approaches to performance and musicality, were forced to reconsider their rigid classifications. Fans of each artist discovered or rediscovered the other. Most significantly, the music industry itself felt the ripple effects of that spontaneous collaboration. In the years that followed, the Jackson John Challenge, as it came to be known, inspired countless other artists to step outside their comfort zones, to risk imperfection in pursuit of authentic creative moments. Record executives, initially horrified by the commercial implications of unrehearsed performances, gradually recognized the public's hunger for genuine artistic expression. In interviews afterward, both Michael and Elton were asked repeatedly about that night. Elton spoke freely about it, calling it the most terrifying and exhilarating musical experience of my life. Michael, characteristically more reserved, would smile and say only, "Some moments aren't meant to be repeated or explained. They exist perfectly as they are in the memories of those who were there." And indeed, despite the countless requests and lucrative offers, the two never attempted to recreate or record the song they created together. It existed only in that moment, a unique expression that belonged to the 20,000 witnesses who had experienced it firsthand. Bootleg recordings circulated, of course, but both artist management teams were surprisingly aggressive in having them removed from circulation. Not for commercial reasons, but because both Michael and Elton believed that the magic of that moment lived in its impermanence, in its existence as a shared memory rather than a documented performance. 5 years later, when Elton performed at the same venue during his Made in England tour, he made an unscheduled change to the show. After playing Daniel, he paused and said simply, "This was where it happened." The audience, many of whom had been present that legendary night, erupted in immediate recognition. Elton smiled and held up his hand, on which he wore a single white glove, not Michael's original gift, which he had framed and kept in his private study, but a replica he had specially made for this moment of tribute. To absent friends, to magical nights, to music that exists beyond time, he said, and then played a brief, hauntingly familiar melody, just enough of their improvised composition to evoke the memory without attempting to recapture it entirely. Decades later, long after both men had left this world, leaving behind catalogs of music that continued to inspire and move new generations, a small, exclusive exhibition opened at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. At its center, in a specially designed display case illuminated by a single spotlight, rested a white glove, the glove. Beside it, a simple placard told the story of that September night in Madison Square Garden, when two musical legends challenged each other to transcend the boundaries of prepared performance and create something that could only exist once, in one place, at one moment in time. Each day, visitors would stand before that display, many too young to have witnessed the original event, yet drawn to it by the power of its legacy. And each night, after the museum closed, the glove remained, a silent testament to the night when Elton John challenged Michael Jackson on stage, and what happened next became legendary. If you were moved by this story, take a moment now to like and subscribe, and join us next week for another chapter in the hidden history of the musicians who shaped our world. The triumphs, the tragedies, and the transcendent moments that remind us why we need music in our lives. Because in the end, it's not about the records sold or the awards won. It's about those rare, precious moments when the artifice falls away and we glimpse something authentic, something true, something that connects us across all the boundaries that normally divide us. Like that night in Madison Square Garden, when two very different artists found common ground in the simple, sacred act of making music together.